I won't be hiring, um, or unless it's attrition. To be honest, um, I guess how will it change? I guess there'll be a lot more time spent um, on advising the business on how we can keep the team safe, advising the business on how we can better support the team and provide all that additional flexibility. We're reasonably flexible anyway, but I think this has just highlighted the level of flexibility that people want and desire, and that work-life balance that we've been talking about. So really kind of getting the business to carry on with that and really carry on listening to what their employees want.
So at the moment we are officeless. We've given up our company office. So I don't think my role will change very much at all when we go back into some sort of office. The commuting is probably the major thing that will change. It's obviously easier to wrangle people when you're all in the same building, but it looks like we might be going back with very much more of a flexible working pattern. Especially while there's still restrictions. I imagine that we'll actually have a lot of the downsides still of the sort of remote work. It's very much going to be similar, I believe.
As HR professionals who take care of culture and recruitment at a company, I think a lot of focus right now, while attracting good talent, is towards pay. I think that is something that is likely to change moving forward because health and wellness benefits are most likely to be the game changer. It's probably going to cause a fundamental shift in the way that the companies will be judged in the future, depending on exactly how they treated their employees in the time of a crisis. Because we are in a time where the entire healthcare system is trying to evolve, with both private and public communities coming together to fix what seems to be like a broken system, relatively. And I think that is something that will change the role of an HR moving forward.
So I don't think my role or our roles will change too much once we return to the office, and it'll be interesting to see if we actually are fully office-based again or if there's more flexibility about where we work from. We are currently looking at how we recruit at the moment across our 10 UK locations and our 2 in the US, with further potential expansion plans into Europe. So we're already prior to this, and the lockdown has actually helped it. Actually looking at how we can centralise a lot of the recruitment processes and functions that we do, try to streamline what we do and improve it. So if anything, the lockdown has actually prompted us to sort of speed that up really, and try and improve recruitment at our company.
One thing I think in my role that might change when we go back to the office is the speed at which we move through the recruiting process. We have managers who are really engaged in hiring. They're really passionate about finding the perfect person. But obviously finding the perfect person comes at a price sometimes. Has its pitfalls in terms of a methodology looking for that unicorn. I think that managers who have perhaps taken a little bit too long to send their feedback, to push candidates through the process, or those that have got someone to final stage to then ask for a comparison, those are the managers I think who will really be amping up and making sure things happen faster. The reason I say that is we've lost a few roles from our plan on the precipice of being offered based on financial changes we've had to make due to COVID. I think what we'll see is managers who will find that they are more willing to invest in a little bit of a longer ramp time with someone, maybe doing even a bit more training and sort of under hiring rather than looking for someone that just ticks every box for the sake of a box ticking exercise. And they'll be willing to maybe go with their gut rather than look for a comparison just so that on paper they can say we did that final step.
The first thing that comes to mind is flexible working. Once we're on the other side of this crisis, I feel like there's going to be an expectation from candidates that flexible working is a given. In a world that was moving in that direction anyway, I think the lockdown has now accelerated the need for businesses to be more flexible with how they allow their employees to structure their working hours.
We're not just talent acquisition or recruitment partners, but we are now looking at how we can shape the overall recruitment or talent acquisition strategy when it does come to a time where we have unexpected, unforeseen circumstances, for like the pandemic. So I think there is a lot more appreciation for recruitment, and I believe once we are back in the office and in the new normal, we'll be seen more just as not just a service of hiring and bringing people in, but actually being trusted partners in working with the business and working with stakeholders, and even at the C-level, C-suite level, that we are here more for the long term rather than the short term.
Massively. This pandemic has been the biggest catalyst for change that I can remember. The way that we are structured as a business, the way that we will look to continue to grow and develop will be fundamentally altered in terms of kind of the landscape. And with that in mind, then so will the kind of opportunities to resource and bring in the best talent as well. No longer will we necessarily constrained to geographical locations. We will be able to forward plan with other skill sets that actually we've worked out we need now based on how we've operated over the last couple of months, rather than what we necessarily foresaw, sort of 6-7 months ago. And also, I suppose the way that we go to attract talent now is very different. Things that such as flexibility being a benefit of some opportunities now are probably mandatory for a lot of people in terms of what companies should be offering. We have seen that working from home works, and now is there a reason that people need to be in an office? What does that balance look like? What do we need to be offering as an organisation, and how do we as talent professionals go about bringing those individuals in and working with the organisation to do so? So loads of differences, loads of changes, and a really exciting time, to be honest.
During this period of Corona and being locked away, I've learned to be resourceful. You have to adjust. You have to also be outgoing, connect to multiple people. You need to build connections, because you don't have that commute. You don't have that connection when you get into the office. So you really have to go and do an extra effort to get out in front of people and reach out and make connections. And I think finding ways to have fun together is one of those more difficult places. Whether it's using Quiplash, in Chicago we have a company, Jellyvision, that created Jack, Fibbage, number of those. Using those in a remote setting really works well. So those are that's some of the things I think. Get connected and keep having fun.
Two things. The first is the power of communities. So basically, I joined a few communities online, including, for example, in the talent acquisition space, the recruiting brain food community, and then in the kind of other spaces, kind of following my hobbies and interests. I joined, for example, a zero waste community in Dublin, which kind of focuses on swapping items or giving away for free items that you no longer want, but you don't want to throw away, and a bunch of other communities as well. So the reason that this is great is because communities can really help you answer any questions that you might have that you're struggling with. And it's a really good idea to just ask, because you will be surprised with how many solutions people produce. So this is something that I've been using very much during the lockdown. And the second thing is organizing my time according to the principle of eating that frog. So this is from a book by Brian Tracy called, I believe, Eat That Frog, and there's some subtitle, but basically the book is about prioritizing your tasks in such a way that you start with your most difficult and most important task in the morning when your energy is high and when you can really take advantage of your full kind of brain power. And then you don't move on to the easier activities until you've dealt with this primary activity. And this is a great principle. I'm still learning to do this. It's work in progress, but it's been working very well for me so far.
It's been really, really interesting, actually. I think that we've all probably learned a lot about ourselves individually. But if I was to kind of take a more general view around hiring. It's that remote hiring can be done. It can be done really, really well. It can be done very, very effectively. You have to have the right processes in place, and I think more importantly, the right attitude. I think that a lot of people have adjusted very well to working from home, but also as well to interviewing from home. The only things that I've noticed, particularly within our interview processes, that we've had to be mindful of is the fact that the kind of what I would describe as like maybe the softer parts of the interviews are missing a little bit. So when you think about meeting and greeting someone at the office and maybe taking them for a little walk around to have a look at the kitchen, and you kind of have that kind of small talk, or you might show them like some of your breakout areas, or you might just show them some things that you want to kind of show them about the office and the office culture. All of that kind of stuff is kind of like there's some chit chat that kind of happens in there, which is really good for them to get to know you, and also really good for you to get to know them. And I think that a number of candidates that we've kind of taken through our process during this time have mentioned to us that they would like to spend some time just chatting. And I think that's probably something that's really, really important for us to kind of bear in mind. And a learning is the fact that, these interview processes, when they happen remotely, can become quite robotic. Everyone's very time structured with regards to the Zoom calls or the video calls that everyone's on. So there's a definite start, there's a definite stop. And the kind of leeway to run over those, which might happen in an interview if it was going really, really well, seems to have kind of disappeared a little bit.
There's so many different types of feelings and emotions that have been sort of developed during this lockdown. I know I've been highs, lows on many occasions. So establishing and trying to recognise where there may be traits of people potentially suffering from depression or mental illness, and just being able to be a good manager and acknowledge them, look for signs, and then of course being able to be that support mechanism to them, and offering better ways of managing themselves, supporting them through what has been an absolute unprecedented situation, which has led to all sorts of feelings. But yeah, just generally being a good manager and sort of going on this journey with them. So,
having personally started a new job during the pandemic and COVID and having to start remotely, I think one of the things I learned or discovered was how underestimated that sort of first week in the office amongst your new team is, just how important that time is to learn everything, and to really sort of get an idea and a picture of the sort of the internal landscape of the business. I've had to rely on a lot more questions and sort of doodles on paper to work out things like organisational structures and to learn the sort of nuances within a business structure.
I've learned how to cook pizza from scratch, and I am a terrible cook, but I can now cook pizza. I can make lemon drizzle cake, and that's my repertoire.
I learned and discovered that you really need to look after and nurture your mental health and well-being, and how to have better conversations about that with the people around me. During lockdown, sport, going outside into the countryside, seeing people, seeing family, that was taken away from me. So I really noticed my motivation, my drive, my mental health take a bit of a hit early on. And I had those open conversations with people around me that I work with. So, are you noticing the same patterns? Are you feeling the same way as I am? And I decided that I had to get some things that made me feel good about myself, get those endorphins going. So I'd always wanted to make stuff out of concrete, so I started making some pots. I made a big kind of concrete bench, which was awesome. I overhauled the garden, and I really felt great about myself, and that allowed me to then have more confidence talking about that with my team, to say, what are the things that make you happy? Right, here, have a personal day, but I want you to learn something new. So some of them started painting, some of them started making gin, getting into the garden. It's been really exciting to have those really personal conversations to see how they're feeling, but then also see these new passions and hobbies that have kind of sprung up and are continuing to make them feel better as we're still in lockdown.
In terms of what we've what I've learned or discovered during this period, one is I'm actually quite good and disciplined at working from home. Had a little bit of practice from a previous role, but I think I get a lot more done without the distractions of the pub beckoning or bumping into too many colleagues at the kitchen area. But I also think what we've really learned and discovered is a lot more about ourselves and adaptability and support. So definitely supporting each other a lot more than I think we would do when we're in the office, seeing people's faces sort of every day, looking after everybody's well-being. But also, I think we've discovered that, remote interviewing, remote onboarding, all those kind of things, that's a lot of talks and topics about at the moment, aren't too difficult to implement. It's sort of stripping it back to the basics really, and constantly iterating and reviewing what you're doing.
And that remote working is hard. You don't get to know your colleagues by osmosis. You have to make a real proactive effort to get involved in the company culture. It doesn't happen by magic. That's got its advantages though. I felt really close to the team that I worked with on my most recent contract. I've also learned I'm more resilient than I thought I was, so that's good. I didn't crack as quickly as I thought I would. It's and also you're never too old to play The Sims. Fun fact. 30, still going. I've been playing this game for 20 years now.
So I think the toughest adjustment for me, moving to remote work, it wasn't necessarily a kind of a good situation or a bad situation. It was just a different situation, right? I think what I really miss though is the social aspects, and just being able to bump into people, talk to people, and also London's quite a nice city, and I live in Sevenoaks, and it's pretty darn quiet.
Yeah, it didn't really have a major impact in the way in which we do things. We'd already had a work from home policy. We were all relatively sorted. So from that point of view, most people were pretty set up. It was, of course, not the way in which we'd probably have chosen to go into remote work. But yeah, we embraced it pretty effectively. We adjusted really quickly. We actually had a decision very early on about whether to extend our lease or not. So we surveyed all of our staff and decided in the end to cancel our office lease. So that was a really big decision, but in retrospect, proven to be the correct one. And we've made a lot of savings during this time, which has been really cool.
The adjustment was pretty good, actually. Being a tech company who already worked flexibly anyway, we kind of had all the tools in place. The difficult thing was keeping the interaction going and
found the adjustment to working remotely actually really easy at the beginning. It was just really busy. It wasn't so hard, but as time has gone on, it's definitely proving to be a bit more of a challenge. Definitely dealing with stakeholders can be very, very difficult when you're working entirely remotely. There's just not that connection sometimes, even if they're new hires as well. I don't think I would ever stay entirely remote. Maybe about 80% in favour of remote.
Has changed quite a lot actually. As a company, we were able to work remotely up to 4 days a week anyway, and I'm somewhat of a nomadic person. I bought a motorhome last year and I've been touring around a little bit that and working from there as well. The changes I've seen in terms of remote work hasn't had a massive impact on our company because we had remote working set up anyway, but for me, I actually moved down to Cornwall at the start of lockdown, so it's had a massive impact on my life. And I found I don't actually want to move back to London anytime soon. I love it down here. I like being out in the countryside, and it's confirmed what I had been banging on about to the company for so long, that people don't need to be based in the office to do their job. How this is going to look in the future, I don't know. I'm a people person. That's why I do what I do. I like being around people. I like the office environment, but my time outside of work is also really important as well. So it's going to be interesting when things return to normal, but I definitely think this has had more positive impact on showing companies how people can work remotely successfully.
The adjustment to remote working, personally, kind of enjoyed it. Kind of like being at home. I've not killed as many plants or vegetables that I'm trying to grow. Still killed some, but not as many as it would have been if I left them alone all week and all day. But yeah, it's not changed too much. If anything, I think the hardest thing around adjusting working from home is knowing when to stop or knowing when to say no. Everyone quickly moved to Teams, Zoom, Slack calls, everything like that a lot more regularly. But personally felt the fatigue of being on those all day. So I think I've learned to say no to things that don't need to be. I don't need to be in or don't need to be over Zoom. But also to try and discipline around working hours. I think that's the hardest thing. It's too easy for me to sort of just keep working, thinking I can just shut down and stop at any point.
I think the adjustment to remote working has definitely been mixed. I think from a positive note, the time that people have got back from not commuting, certainly for me, I spend like an hour and a half each way commuting into London. I think having that time back has been amazing and allowed me to kind of do some more things that I wouldn't normally do. And then I think also on the other side of that, I think in the recruitment world, you're very much people. And I think that missing that human contact and that kind of interaction with people on a daily basis has certainly been strange. I definitely think there's been a lot more intentional meetings, and you're not necessarily getting that kind of general interaction with people and sort of the how's your day, how's it going sort of thing, which is a little bit strange.
So for me, the move was pretty straightforward. I think it helps that I'm slightly more introverted though, and so being at home with just the missus was an easy enough transition. However, I'm fully aware of several people who did struggle with the move, and they tend to be people who feed off other people to get their energy.
Adjustment to remote working for my company went really well. However, that's because we are quite small. We're only 22 people in the company, which allowed a lot of a great degree of flexibility to trial and test things early on and ditch things that weren't working for us really quickly. For example, setting tools for everyone, making sure everyone had second monitor, third monitor if needed. Putting that in place really helped to begin with, and then we were testing things like communication tools, what worked for each team, Slack, Zoom. We never had Zoom before, so trying to get play around with all these tools, seeing what works, and then really trying to adapt to any changes that we had to do. So yeah, a lot of testing, trialing, and ditching things that weren't working really helped. Hopefully that would apply to any things that we do in the future for the company to adapt to any new change.
Highs and my lows of the lockdown. I think the highs from a work perspective, we've been able to continue working and continue hiring as we were planning to. So we did pump the brakes on some of the engineering roles and things like that, but our implementation teams and things like that, we've continued to hire throughout. So we've, since being out the office, we've hired 14 new starters permanently. We've got 6 co-ops coming in, and we've also brought in 1 contractor since being out the office. So that's been really, really positive. I think on a personal note, it's been really good sort of spending time at home and obviously being able to hang out with my wife more. And I've also got a house rabbit who's living his best life. He basically curls up on my feet all day while I'm sort of sitting at my desk. So that's been really good as well, to sort of spend some time at home with the family that probably I wouldn't have been able to normally. I think lows, again, from a work perspective, while we've been able to work really effectively as a team, it's been tough not being together, and particularly not being able to celebrate successes, and also kind of work on the more challenging times and sort of be together for that as well. I also kind of miss being in the city. I love working from home and I love the flexibility it gives me, but I do like going in and out of the city and spending time there as well. And I think the big thing personally is I've been over in the States for a couple of years now, and with the sort of lack of travel and the not being able to get home, usually I can sort of hop in a Uber, be at the airport in 20 minutes and hop on a plane home in 5-6 hours. Not having that sort of, I wasn't planning on going home, but not having that option there, it makes home feel quite a long way away. So that's been quite an adjustment personally. So I'm looking forward to being able to travel again and coming back.
So a huge benefit from working remotely has been I've been able to spend time with the family. I have a 3-year-old and now a 3-month-old, so getting to spend time with her just after she was born has been priceless, to be honest. Usually I'd obviously have gone back to work after paternity leave, but that hasn't had to be the case, so I've been able to kind of adjust my working hours to spend time with them and support the family. So it's been fantastic. It's brought us all together as a family unit. You know, for me that's been absolutely priceless. I think the flip side to that is it's gone a bit stir crazy, and there's no real opportunity to come out of that bubble at the moment, which I probably would have used work as a bit of an escape at that point in time. And I miss that social interaction. I miss being able to be around people to go and see friends and things like that. But you know, the time spent with family has been unbelievable, and I'll probably look back fondly on this time and as an opportunity when during normal working life I would never have got the opportunity to do so.
What have been the highs and lows of lockdown? Well, I guess the high is definitely teaching my daughter to ride a bike without stabilisers. That was fantastic. The lows, everything else.
My highs of lockdown have been not having to commute, even though it got to a point where I actually am starting to miss it. But but not having to commute on a daily basis, and the savings around commuting and food at the office and being able to eat at home, those have been good highlights. And the lows, definitely around the social aspect. I think that even when you work remotely on normal circumstances, you can work from home and then get out and about and meet your friends, or go to the gym or go to the cafe. Whereas, with this current circumstances, it's pretty much everything happens in these 4 walls. So I think that's definitely been the hardest bit.
There's been some real highs and lows during the lockdown. I think one of the big highs for me has really been, the extra family time that I've had. Getting to see daughter take her first few steps. I wouldn't have had that if I'd have been working in an office full time. That's been like quality time that I never anticipated I would really get. The lows have been really every day kind of panning out very similar, and a lack of variety in terms of like how you spend your day. I found that a real struggle at times, but I think what it has given me overall has been a positive experience, because it's given me for the first time some breathing space to really think and evaluate my priorities, my goals, and the direction that I want to move in, like professionally and personally. And I've never had that thinking time previously, because I've always been on to the next thing. And for that, I think it's been slightly odd, but very positive experience.
Highs and lows of lockdown. My high is actually how much I enjoy remote working. I didn't think I would. I've always had quite a social office experience. I've always enjoyed working in companies where I get along with people and can have fun. And that's actually translated a lot better remotely than I thought it would. My low is the decrease in organic knowledge transfer that I don't have remotely compared to the office. A lot of times I'll overhear conversations from other teams or just people in the office and learn through that. And I didn't realize until a couple weeks at home how much not having that would actually affect me and my work.
The highs, the commute is super short. and much better to travel back and forth, so you can jump in and start working right away. And I think creating connection at home, just being able to spend more time at home and do gardening or whatever. I have a huge garden out back, so it's been really nice to be able to spend some time in doing that. The lows, I lost my job, so that's pretty shitty. And really being isolated and losing connection with people and not seeing people on a daily basis. And for a lot of us that are in talent or in HR, people, losing that direct connection is super tough.
So from a work perspective, I think the highs have been the fact that, we were in a very, very fortunate position, and it's very bittersweet for me to say this, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who have not had the same luck, but we didn't have to furlough any staff. We've all kept working. Our company culture has really, really come to the front. I think the leadership from our exec team has been exceptional. We have been looked after, I think, as well as anyone could have possibly have asked. I think that they have thought about all different aspects of remote working and lockdown. We've had support around, our working environments at home. We already had mental health champions in place, but they have become much, much more prominent in the work that we're doing. Our culture leads, the people who kind of deal with all of the great things that Super Awesome does kind of in the background, have put together some amazing initiatives, where we've had access to You Can Now, which has been a great kind of opportunity for us all to learn some new skills. So that's a online learning course where we've been on, and I've done talks about having difficult conversations. I've done talks about how to write better business documents. Also, there was even one which was amazing, which was a chap who had trekked to the South Pole and the North Pole. He'd done these expeditions, so he was there talking about how to deal with isolation, which I think, these sorts of things are amazing. So I think the highs have definitely been how our business has responded. We've also as well managed to make around 15, in actual fact 16 offers during lockdown. We've onboarded over 20 people to the company remotely, and I think that that's just a credit to the business that I work for. So there have been some definite highs in terms of my colleagues and the workplace. I think in terms of the lows, obviously I would love to be back out seeing my friends. I think that that's probably the main thing for me, is the lack of social contact with my friends and with my family. So I think there's two sides to that coin, but I have to say that overwhelmingly I think that Super Awesome have done an amazing job of looking after us, and it has made lockdown that bit easier for everyone.
My highs of lockdown have definitely been the sense of community that I've got from the DBR network. I've really enjoyed Matt Buckland's DBR Cabin Fever Challenges. Thank you. I've won a couple as well, so that definitely helps. Lows, I miss hugs. Nothing to do with work, really. I just miss people. Miss the pub. We'll get back there eventually. Take each day as it comes, and we'll get through it. But the sense of community has definitely really helped me get through it, and DBR's been a really big part of that. So thank you, everyone in DBR, for showing up and being fab and being hilarious. Mwah. Love you all.
So the highs and lows of lockdown life for me. I think the lows are not seeing my team and colleagues on a daily basis, and being able to go for a pint after work. Really enjoyed that. So that's definitely a low. I think the highs are getting to spend more time at home, spend more time with my wife and with our cat. I have put on a bit of weight though, so I'm definitely not doing the exercise that I should be doing. So I guess I'll put that down to a low. I'm missing the fortnightly trims, as you can quite clearly see. But other than that, it's been quite good, to be honest.
The highs of lockdown for me have been that I've built some really good relationships with my colleagues at work, and I've actually stayed in touch with people from the office way more than I actually thought I would. Our Slack activity in the EMEA channel has been incredible. It's been higher than it ever has before, and I've actually taken inspiration from Matt's amazing cabin fever challenge, and we actually have created a global Thursday sharing challenge. Today it was memes, another day it's been family photos, holiday photos, things like that, and it's actually got really competitive and people all over the world are taking part and really coming together about it. I think that's been a really great high. We also take time Monday, Wednesday, Friday as a small EMEA HR team to have a bring your own coffee, and we get together and it's a no work chat rule, so it's been really nice sharing recipes, talking about my colleagues' house hunt and all these other things. So that's been really great just to stay connected. So that's been a pretty good high for me from a work perspective. The lows of lockdown are much more on a personal level for me. So I really miss my grandparents. So my granddad, one of my granddads is actually nearly 101. So not being able to see him and hug him every week has been really, really difficult. It's been a real struggle. I've always been someone that's kind of seen family every week. I catch up with my friends a lot and dinners and this, that and the other. So I've just really missed the social side of it. But hopefully the end is in sight soon and I can get back to hugging everyone every time I see them.
I think the highs of the lockdown for me have definitely been getting a kitten. Hello, Mr. Candidate. I've been expecting you. But that's also the lows of the lockdown for me, because that kitten spends a lot of its time scratching. Scratching me, scratching my wife, scratching the eyes out of my 18-month-old son.
Now businesses have no choice but to change processes and structures and the way they run their businesses. It's still a very long road yet to go, and it's a real shame that changes had to come about in this way, but now at least it looks like we're on that road.
Listen, educate, values. Those are the three things that I think is going to be the world for these two professions, and I think HR is really going to have to listen. After the BLM protests, lots of things have changed. There's been a ton of education, so we are going to have to change the way we look at how we're educating our employees, but also we have to look and listen to our minorities more than ever. Post-pandemic, I think it's important to again listen and educate. There is going to be a lot of employee relations. You might be an organisation that's going through a lot of change at the moment, and it's quite natural for employees to feel unheard at this time. So reach out, listen, educate, bring your benefits up to speed to support your employees. It's going to be more valuable than ever. Think about your values. Are you standing by your values within the recruitment process? Are you changing as a modern employer? It's all going to come down to this. Everyone's eyes are going to, especially in the organisation, be on the people team and what we're doing. With recruitment, we've got to really, really change the way we look at equal opportunity and affirmative action, and that is going to be intrinsic. Start listening to the minority communities, start listening to those communities you offer equal opportunities to, see what you can do more of, and make sure that is representative in your interview process. It's great that you put it out in your job ads, but it can't just be in your job ads. It has to be intrinsic within your organisation, otherwise you're not selling the right thing. I think after the BLM protest, people are going to be looking at that before they pick you as an employer. So be ready, be prepared. The world is changing, but it's changing for positive. Even post-pandemic, it can all be positive. Keep your employees happy, keep yourselves happy at the end of this, and keep educating and learning. And if you don't know within this profession, it's not shameful to ask for help from people that do know, maybe about the minority communities and ones that can help you. Listen to your employees for employee relations. Please ask for help from your community. It's more important than ever. Don't let ego get in the way. We are a changing world. We're a changing profession. It's never embarrassing to ask for help.
Deal with we deal with people's lives, and we deal with the change in the concerns that everybody has. So really looking internally, there has to be a very strong look at how your processes and how your company handles things from a health perspective, first of all, and second of all, from a diversity standpoint. What are we doing in our processes to take out the unconscious bias? Really pushing our hiring managers to think critically about that process, giving those options, finding new areas that, and challenging ourselves in the talent side, where to unearth some of that underserved talent in the space, and bring that to the company. Because I truly believe, like, bringing diverse talent and diverse ideas shapes how the company moves forward, and really provides an encompassing perspective of what we're seeing in our countries around the world. And so be mindful of those things, and be compassionate. Listen. We really have to listen, and listen closely to what our employees are saying, and what the concerns of people who want to join the company are. So listen, and be attentive, and we'll connect and make things better for the future of the organization and the industry.
How are companies actually going to take meaningful actions to drive that diversity in their companies, rather than just having like a snippet on job advert that says, we're all for diversity and inclusivity. So yes, I think that for an example, and another is, most companies who previously didn't think flexible working was or is a good idea for business growth. Like, they've had to adapt all of a sudden to remote working. Companies that fail to do this, they're struggling a lot. So sometimes change is needed, and we should embrace these changes. Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So what we learn from these changes and how we take actions after this is, I think, going to be the most important aspect to all this.
Regarding Black Lives Matter movement, well, I could say a lot about this, as you all know, but for me, it's racism is just as poisonous as the pandemic that we're going through, or we're coming out of. But racism is something that's been around a lot longer than COVID-19. If you've never faced racism before, or be it in a subtle or overt way, then it's very difficult to even manifest or comprehend what millions of Black people are going through every single day. It's very difficult to be Black in the workplace, and to be a Black woman as well in particular. And I stress this because the hierarchy of respect is right down there for Black women. We're actually under hell. And so if you're not Black, you will never, even as a person of color, and I'm saying Black in particular because BAME is very different to Black, and if you're not Black, you'll never understand the experience of a Black person. It's as simple as that. But what we can all do going forward, or what people who are not Black can do going forward, is really become an ally. When I mean an ally, not a passive ally, but a vocal ally, and stand up for what is wrong, calling out those injustices that they see. Making people accountable, making sure that companies are not being performative, saying we're going to stand up to racism, but actually act on that mission, act on those statements that they're putting out. So it's about being vocal allies. It's about asking your Black colleagues how they are. It's not easy, and these conversations, they shouldn't be taboo, and they shouldn't be uncomfortable. Imagine how I feel. How fortunate that many people are learning about racism instead of experiencing it. So yeah, there's so much we can do, but educate yourself, read up, and stand up for what's right. We deserve to work in a place that's equal for all, and equality that's equal for all. Yeah, for sure.
That's an interesting one for me. Having suffered from discrimination myself, I think it's going to be something difficult for us to actually see any change in from the things that we currently see. What I mean by that is most things and decisions are made top down, and if the top are still those types of people, I'm saying those types, if they are ignorant to what is fair, then that message from a leadership level sort of gets relayed down. People don't make many changes. So I'm not confident that actually we will see a significant change in the way people think and see and act. And it's a shame, really, because we should, and it's the right thing to do, and the world will be a better place. But yeah, for me, it's definitely, the top down. Let's get into the top down head. But that isn't something that happens overnight. So.
I think to continue to retain relevance, it's really important for people and recruitment functions to show how they directly impact the bottom line. When you look at the employee life cycle, the stuff that we do increases the area under that graph. So hiring the best possible person you can, developing them as quickly as you can, as much as you can, keeping them in the organisation for as long as you can, that directly affects the success of the organisation, and showing that, and that you're not just the person people go to when they've got a question about their holiday allowance or when there's a disciplinary. It's really important.
I think in the future, recruitment and HR need to continue to adapt. I don't think that there's any one specific thing that we have to do in order to continue succeeding in our roles. I think it just adapting to what the situation is and helping other people adapt.
In order to stay relevant, I think HR really needs to think about two key areas. One, to continue to find its voice with the company and how it contributes to the company goals. I do think we have some ground to make up in comparison to other disciplines, and having that seat at the table. But ultimately, I think that comes from being more data informed in terms of how we work, contributing to planning process, contributing to the shape of the company and how it operates, internally. I also think as well, for HR to stay relevant, it needs to continue to delve more into the employee wellbeing side of things, and there's some variation there beyond, I guess historically the remit of HR, where I think they can add huge value within a business, because burnout is a real thing these days, and there's an opportunity for HR to play a key role in terms of reducing and minimizing that, and in turn, helping to get better results as well for the business.
HR has already, gotten to a place where it can be much more strategic than it used to. When we think about the role that HR had about many years ago, when it was mainly, the admin person. There's probably going to be a need for developing more data skills in order to support, all of the initiatives that HR can bring to the company. So I think at the moment there's still a little bit of reticence and fear when it comes to large, data sheets or Excel or, any form of data analysis when it comes to HR. So I think in that sense, we're going to need to lose that fear and upskill in data analysis. I'm not saying that we should all start learning Python tomorrow, although if you can, then be my guest. That's great. But in order to be more strategic and be able to help the business develop or reach their own, business strategies, we need to be able to come with numbers as well, and to understand them, and to back all of our, everything we bring to the table with data. We cannot continue being more of just a people person. We also need to be more of a data person. There's loads of courses out there at the moment, and there's a lot of information for those who are more self-taught. So yes, definitely that is something that I think will need to happen in order to stay relevant.
I think it's a really important one. I think a lot of the ways in which HR is sort of currently employed is very much a sort of manufacturing context, and I think the quarterly planning for startups and tech companies and scale ups and companies that are growing rapidly, is sometimes just like wrong weeks later. Never mind, like by the end of the quarter. So like embodying those agile ways of working, delivery, I think are super important. And actually as well, really deeply understanding the business. So although HR is an enabler, I think it's really critical that you have deep subject matter expertise in the area that you're working to be able to actually add value. A lot of things don't make sense in a different context. Understanding a sort of like classic example would be sort of a shift pattern in a manufacturing plant as opposed to sort of flexible working with software engineers, etc. These things aren't like maybe both have a bit of flexibility, but it's not the same. It's not comparable. So you really need to understand, the way that work is done, the way that value is created in a tech business. I think to be able to provide value as a HR professional.
Well, lots of things, because if we're talking about hiring, people are going to definitely start thinking about the way they hire, where they find talent from, how they hire, their recruitment processes. Are they fair? Are they biased? Are they the same? Are you cutting corners? Are you using best practices? These are all the things that we're gonna, we should have been thinking about before, but certainly now, after this unrest, and also with HR in particular, especially when we've heard from leaders in the business saying, you can't work from home, you're not allowed flexibility. Yes, some businesses already have those things in place, but a lot of the corporate businesses, the bigger ones, they don't have things like that in place. I've worked in companies where they don't have a flexibility policy, or it is your bog standard. You come in, you work, and whatever happens outside your life happens outside your life. It's not our life. That's going to change. A lot of companies are seeing that people can be just as productive, even more productive when they are working from home, when they're not having to think about commuting for hours on end just to get into the office. All of that valuable hours, all those valuable hours, all that time that's lost, you can gain actually working from home. All of the deliverables are being met. Your success is still there and things are still being done, and actually people are being a lot more forthcoming. They're being a lot more innovative in how they do things. So going forward, companies will have to adapt a flexible working policy, because that's just the way it is now.
I think for HR to remain relevant in the future, it probably needs to lose the HR tag for one. Stop thinking about people just as resources, or even worse, human capital management. But it's not simply about the title or kind of what that means, but actually to think more carefully, to take more time to ask for those resources that you need in order to build better organizations, and to really take the time to learn what makes the organization tick, not just at a people level, but also at a commercial level as well.
HR and recruitment need to be willing to be more fearless. They need to be willing to use the time that we've all been working from home to prove that flexible working does work for a business and that employees can be productive, and use that and leverage it to be able to welcome more people into the workforce than ever before. We also need to learn from the things that the Black Lives Matter protests have really brought to the forefront and opened our eyes and my eyes, and be more fearless around challenging stereotypes that harm Black people trying to get into the workforce. And this offers us an opportunity to have a complete reset. We've never seen something like this in our lifetime. So I think that we really need to embrace it and not be afraid to push our leadership teams, not be afraid to push our hiring managers, and really challenge the reasons why they think that they can't offer a day or two a week from home for a role, or why so-and-so isn't a cultural fit. It doesn't matter if you can't imagine having a beer with somebody when you're recruiting for a remote role anyway. So I really want to see my industry step up and be more fearless moving forward.
Personally, I'm optimistic. When you look at the businesses that were born out of the last recession, it's exciting to see what will come out of this crisis. I'm definitely not saying it's going to be easy, but at least this time round, businesses were able to have some lead time and were able to prepare and had an idea of what was coming in order to make contingency plans and prepare for the climb back up after lockdown.
I think if I was looking back on lockdown in a couple of years' time, I would probably say it has been a time when people have really banded together. You've definitely seen a difference in humanity, I guess, over the last few months, certainly.
I would love to say it's a bounce back, and I really, really hope I'm wrong, but I think it'll be a really slow recovery and a really, really deep recession.
Unfortunately, however much I'd love to have a crystal ball and see what the future looks like, I don't. So I'm merely going to go with my gut, and my gut is always pretty optimistic. So I think that we will see a bounce back. I think a lot of companies are using furloughing as an opportunity to delay some very tough decisions. And I am sure we'll see some redundancies at quite a significant scale, particularly in older industries. But I think that there is hope to be had. I think there is a lot of opportunity that will come out of this. However, we'll have to go through some very hard times first. But I think the economy as a whole within the United Kingdom has a great chance to bounce back quickly and to provide and create jobs which people will desperately need.
Our economy is a lot more resilient than we make it out to be. I think we will recover, we will bounce back. It might not be quick because of how unpredictable the situation is right now. There are no timeframes, there's no indication of this pandemic slowing down. We're not having any trends on a global scale. We're not seeing anything that we can kind of predict, unfortunately. But given that, I still believe that we will bounce back and we will recover and we will be booming. Once we've overcome this, I think we would have overcome a massive hurdle, and it will definitely help us anticipate how better to prepare for this. And I think we would be in a better position because a lot of companies are now fully remote until no time given, and we're still operating. Productivity is still the same. There's a massive consideration now given to mental health, which wasn't before. So that's one positive I can see coming out of this. But yeah, I do believe we will bounce back and we will recover.